Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today got a bit of firearms content for you, as recently an article about the XM-5, actually now it's the XM-7, had come across to me, and I found the information very interesting, and mostly because I'd actually covered this subject before in a previous video, which I'm going to have a link down below to that video, but essentially I was proven right the whole time. So to dive on into it, there's an article that I've seen today from the Army Times that the XM-5, now XM-7, is actually not going to be adopted as a general service rifle by the United States Army, that they've actually completely changed their mind, and even the article goes into details of why. And like I said, this kind of proves me right. And don't get me wrong, there is other gun experts that has covered this very subject, or at least people I'd consider gun experts. Grantham himself, and then of course Ian McCollum, all from Forgotten Weapons, also covered their thoughts about the XM5. And generally speaking, their thoughts were kind of in line with my thoughts of, yeah, this is a good, interesting rifle. A general service rifle? Not so much. It's more like a specialized piece in the toolbox. All right, so let's cover the renaming first. The renaming actually was towards the beginning of the year. I just found this out as well, that it was originally designated as XM5, and they changed. Usually what happens is when a rifle is in the testing prototype stages, it's given an XM designation. So, such as with the M16, it was designated as XM16. So, with the XM5, it was originally designated as XM5. However, around the same time, Colt had released their M5 platform, which is essentially another upgraded M4 type rifle, if you will. So, to prevent any confusion, at the beginning of the year, they actually announced a name change from the XM5 to the XM7. I had completely missed that, which honestly, it's not really important. It's got no context of what my videos, this video or the previous video, actually has to do with. But essentially, yeah, because of the Colt M5, usually what would happen is when a rifle is adopted, they drop the X and then it's the M, which is the official service rifle. So at the XM16, when it got out of the prototype and testing stages, it became the M16. And that was going to be the same general idea for the XM5, that when it got adopted, it would be the M5. However, because of Colt's rifle, they changed it to XM7, and it is still in testing stages, which is interesting to find out in itself. So the next thing I want to cover is mud test. The M4 has actually proven itself to be a pretty damn reliable rifle over and over and over again. Now, of course, over the years, it's had to receive some minor tweaks to get the rifle to where it is today. Such things as putting the Magpul follower into the standard GI magazines, actually improving the gas block, which is the M4 A1 Block 2, things of that nature to improve the rifle's reliability and performance overall, especially in adverse conditions. However, that being said, SIG actually put these rifles out on the civilian market, and a bunch of civilians have gotten their hands on these rifles, and obviously some of them are gun tubers, and they've done tests to the rifles. And they've actually proven to be unreliable. The XM5s or XM7s has actually proven to be unreliable during these mud tests. The same type of mud tests that these same people run M4s through, have proven to be absolutely unreliable for the M5. As well as the article actually does bring up the fact that the military over time has found reliability issues with the feed system, the gas system, if you will, on the XM-5. So they're even the military at this point has started to raise red flags, if you will, on the performance of the M5 in adverse conditions, especially extreme adverse conditions, which I know there's going to be people out there that are like, well, you're not going to completely cake your rifle in mud on purpose. No, in a combat situation, you're not going to completely cake your mud on purpose. However, in field conditions, it is quite possible, very possible to be honest. I only know this because of my time in the service, that it is possible to completely cake your mud in your rifle in mud. I've never really had any serious reliability issues with the the M16A2 when I was in the service. That was the primary service rifle of the time. And, my rifle pretty much always ran. Sometimes I'd have an issue with the ammunition or the feeding, but for the most part, it proved pretty reliable and actually much more reliable than the XM5 has so far. And with that being said, these were not XM16, or sorry, I don't know why I keep saying XM16. The M16A2 was not a Block 2 pattern gas block. It wasn't meant for the more adverse conditions, but it still somehow proved to be a very reliable rifle for myself as well as most of the people I had served with. And also understand, too, by this point, when I enlisted in the service, I enlisted in 2003, the XM6, oh my God, I said it again, the M16A2 had already been in service for quite a few years. These were not brand new rifles that we were handling. These were aged rifles. So that has to be kind of taken into consideration. Now, the next thing that's kind of proven to be, I don't know how you want to put it, but essentially a bane of its existence is the overstatement of the 277 Fury round, which is the 6.8 by 51. Originally, it was stated that it could penetrate level 4 body armor. However, one thing that was not originally stated is the 6.8 millimeter ammo that was used during these tests, these body armor penetration tests, was actually tungsten steel, had tungsten steel penetrators. And they were cutting through the level 4 body armor like a hot knife through butter. However, that's kind of a problem in itself. Logistically speaking, the United States, we don't make a lot of tungsten steel anymore. So that causes a logistics problem. So basically what it comes down to is when it comes to velocity and when it comes to penetration, the 277 Fury round actually has not proven to be head and shoulders over the 7.62 NATO ammunition as originally stated. Actually, its performance has kind of shown to be on par or subpar to the 7.62 NATO. So it's been very interesting on that end. Now, that being said, also with logistics being in mind, this came up in the article as well, is that the military currently already has, the United States military, now I'm going by the military as a whole, for its small weapons. MARSOC uses the Colt M45A1, which is a 1911 style pistol, and it shoots 45 ACP. There's also a plethora of 9mm pistols, mostly the SIG M17, but there's also the SIG M18, which that's fine. They both use the same types of magazines. They both fire 9mm ammunition. Of course, then you have the 7.62 rifles, such as the M14 EBR, the SCAR H, as well as the 7.62 machine guns, such as the M240, the M60, the MK48, and then, of course, you have the 5.56 stuff, such as the M4 and the M249, the SAW. and then basically kind of looking at it as, and then we're going to add another round on top of that. And it was decided that it was kind of looked at as this could be a mistake waiting to happen, that this is going to just increase the amount of logistics, especially because when originally indicated that main frontline combat units was going to be getting these XM-5 rifles as well as special forces, but there was also still going to be M4s still in service, which could raise the possibility that one unit could need two different types of ammunition just for its rifles, maybe even possibly three different types of ammunition for its combat rifles. Now, the next thing that come up in the article as well is also the weight. They realize that the weight is just not worth the trouble. Basically, what it comes down to is to carry the ammunition, carry the rifle fully kitted out with your grips, your Gucci man toys that you attach to your M4s. Essentially, what come down to is, hey, cool, we're going to have a 13.5-pound rifle, which would be the heaviest rifle ever in the United States military, as the general service rifle. Soldiers essentially to carry ammunition and to carry their rifle fully Gucci'd out, they would literally have to drop their helmet, their body armor, and a bunch of other shit. And it just comes down to is, yeah, this isn't worth it. It's just too damn heavy, which was actually one of my major arguments in my earlier video, is that the rifle is just too heavy. Yes, it's lighter than an M14 when it's stripped bare bones. But the M14, when the M14 was in service, didn't have all the Gucci man toys that's out there nowadays. We didn't have all the fancy optics that we have now. We didn't have grips, different types of customization stocks. We didn't have PECs, tactical lights, all that bullshit. Basically, at that time, it was just a rifle and a bayonet, and that was it. Where now we're talking about all kinds of different Gucci man toys that you like to put on your AR-15s, and don't get me wrong, I like that shit on my AR-15 too. But when it comes down to it, even though I have my AR-15 kitted out with all kinds of Gucci man toys, it's still lighter than the SIG M5. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty heavy rifle then, just to be honest. The next thing that come up in the article too was the Vortex XM-157. One problem with the XM-157 is at the time, once again, when this rifle was announced that was going to be adopted for service, proved to be, well, a lot of the stuff that was said about the optic at the time proved to be bullshit. Now, there is some truth behind the optic, but it's kind of one of those that the optic was overstated. The next thing that come up with the optic too was the price tag. Understand if I might have this wrong, but if I remember correctly, this is a $20,000 optic. This is not something you want to put in the hands of a general infantryman, because this is something that people will fucking break. No matter how tough you make it, they will find a way to break it. I mean, one of the toughest optics in military service right now is the Trijicon ACOG, and those still get broken. So they've kind of backpedaled on the whole Vortex XM-157, as well as it's not the silver bullet they said it was going to be. So yeah, it looks like that kind of fell flat on its face, which I was skeptical of the optic at the time, but it was more about the price tag and how well will it perform. And it's kind of proven that, yeah, this optic may not be as good as we originally thought it was going to be. Now, the next thing is too, and this also has to do with the optic, and this also has to do with what I reverted to and alluded to back when I did my initial video on the XM-5, is that it was a knee-jerk reaction to the war in Afghanistan. And that has proven to be absolutely true, that it was nothing more than a knee-jerk reaction, that there was a lot of long-range engagements that were going on in Afghanistan where there was ridge-to-ridge fighting. Some of the fighting was going way beyond 500 meters when it came to range. We were getting in firefights that was anywhere ranging from 500 to 800 meters. And yes, the M4 in that case had proven to be ineffective for the most part. And that's mostly got to do with the fact that, well, the M4 is really only a 500 meter range rifle, but it's also a carbine, not a full length rifle. Now, even if they would have used the M16s, which initially a lot of M16s were used by the United States military, they still proved to be ineffective because that's like a 600 meter range rifle. And that being said, too, when I'm mentioning these ranges, like the M4 being a 500 meter range rifle, that's kind of on the extreme end for an M4. And that's more towards where, yeah, you're okay for an M16, but much more than that, you start really losing effectiveness. And of course, with the current situation in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, as we're watching that, what we're seeing going on is firefights are happening anywhere from point blank to 300 meters. And I made the argument that we're having a knee-jerk reaction to the type of war we were having in Afghanistan. And the thing is Afghanistan, in my opinion, was nothing more than the exception, not the rule of how warfare would be fought, or generally how it is fought when you go through history, especially more modern history since World War II. And then, of course, you look at Ukraine, and the war in Ukraine is exactly what I was making the argument for, is that Afghanistan was the exception, not the rule. And Ukraine starts, and when you take a close look at Ukraine and you're looking at the engagement ranges and how the firefights are going, et cetera, I find that essentially Ukraine follows the historical rule on that engagements are ranging anywhere from point blank to 300 meters, with most engagements probably being within 100 to 150 meters. So it's really short really short engagement ranges, as well as a lot of volume of fire over accurate fire. And that was another argument I had made in my previous video. And of course, that was brought up as well, that, hey, the ammunition is heavier. It's 20-shot mags versus 30-shot mags. Soldiers won't be able to carry as much ammunition. And basically, Ukraine has proven that, yeah, soldiers in general purpose situations needs to carry a lot of ammunition, because essentially once the first shots are fired, it comes down to who can lay the most fire at the quickest rate possible, and then accuracy starts to hit if you will, starts to shift how the firefight goes. But usually it comes down to the accuracy of fire, getting your enemy pinned down so you can maneuver around, get yourself into a position where you can engage the enemy more accurately, things of that nature. And yeah, like I said, Ukraine has proved it. Every war outside of Afghanistan and Iraq has proved it. And even when you look at situations like when it comes to Iraq and it comes to Afghanistan, when you look at situations like Fallujah was house-to-house fighting. And it was real intense, house-to-house, close-quarter fighting in urban combat situations, and a lot of the fighting was done within 100 meters. So even Afghanistan, while as a general whole picture proved to be the exception, not the rule, there was still moments in both Iraq and Afghanistan where they showed the rule. And yeah, knee-jerk reaction. That's all this was. And yeah, it's proven it. Now, from what I could tell reading the article, it looks like the rifle is still going to be adopted for limited service with special forces. And that's really about it. And I kind of question that even if you're going to adopt this rifle for limited service with special forces, how much are they really going to use this rifle? I just got that gut feeling that special forces is going to look at rifles. They're going to look for the more often than not. They're going to look for the short barreled M4s like the Mark 18, and they're going to look for the M4A1s. And if they need something heavier, something more long range, they're probably still going to continue looking for stuff like the FN Scar, like the M14 EBR. And more often than not, I kind of got this gut feeling that the XM-5 or XM-7 is going to get overlooked. But okay, fine. That kind of reverts back to what I said, what the gun experts like Grantham had said, what Ian McCollum had said, is that this rifle is more of a special purpose tool, not a general service rifle. And that's essentially what's been indicated. But either way, folks, what it looks like it comes down to is that the M4A1 is going to continue its service. So we've had essentially the AR-15, an AR-15 platform rifle in service since Vietnam, and it actually looks like it's going to continue service for at least a little while longer. I'm not saying that this is going to be completely off the table, but going by what I'm seeing at the Army Times, yeah, it looks like the fate is sealed for the XM-7, and that essentially it's a dead end for now. It doesn't mean they won't revisit this later, and it doesn't mean between now and 10 years from now, something better won't come along. But either way, folks, I'm going to wrap up the video at that. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Went a bit longer than I wanted to, but there was really a lot to dig into here. Anyway, folks, thanks again for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.